Whenever I've had the engine running since I restarted it back in part 13, I have noticed oil at the outer edge of the top barrel fin on the right cylinder. I have been cleaning it off, but there is still a light trace now, although not enough to show in the video. This needs a closer look. Something else needing further attention is this rusty stud on the same cylinder. When I refitted the exhausts back in part 11, I noted that I was unable to remove this stud, so I didn't replace it like I did with the others. Unfortunately, it's clearly prone to rusting and leaving a not so nice trail of rust around the exhaust flange. Let's start with the stud. It needs to come out. Given my previous attempts, including the use of heat, I'm pretty damn sure that it won't be coming out in one piece. After removing the flange, I noticed that the collets are also suffering from rust, so they will also need dealing with. Resigned to the stud snapping, I have another go, and of course get the expected result. The one positive being that there is still part of the stud remaining poking out from the head. That will come in useful later. My suspicions for the oil leak point towards the head gasket, and as I'm not going to attempt to drill out and replace the exhaust stud with the cylinder head in situ, the head needs to come off. The carb comes off first. I also removed the inlet rubber as I've got new ones to fit. I'm a little concerned that they've gone too hard, and despite my efforts to soften them up, might be letting air past. The rocker cover comes off next. It's secured with 8 bolts, all of which I previously coated an alu-slip. Great stuff for stopping corrosion and seizing, but messy as hell as it seems to get everywhere. I am careful not to damage the gasket as I take off the cover. Before I can take the rockers off, I need to turn the crank to get the piston to top dead center on the compression stroke. I can tell it's a compression stroke as both rockers have some free play as they're not pressing on the valves. For each valve there is a single bolt securing the rocker spindle, which when removed allows the spindle to be pushed out. I first removed the exhaust rocker spindle along with the rocker arm, 2 1mm thick washers, a spring and a thinner 1/2mm washer. With the rocker arm out of the way, I remove the push rod and then repeat for the inlet valve. Next, I disconnect the oil feed pipe and then remove the plug that gives access to the head nut on the inside of the cylinder block. There are 6 nuts holding the head in place, 4 of which also hold the rocker carrier plate. After loosening all 6, I remove the 4 holding the carrier plate and remove it. With it out of the way, I can immediately see the cause of the oil leak, as there are meant to be O-rings on these 4 studs between the top of the head and the bottom of the carrier plate. As it was me that last rebuilt the engine, I can only blame myself. To get the head off, I removed the 2 remaining nuts and find the missing O-rings. I'll put this down to a senior moment. With the head off, I can deal with the broken stud. I remove the inlet stub so that I can use the mounting face as a base as I clamp it onto the milling table. I use the old broken stud as a reference to find its centre, but it actually looks like it's slightly bent, so that won't be perfect. With the centre found, or near enough, I cut off what remains, mill it flat, centre drill, and then, with ever increasing drill sizes, drill it out. The last couple of drills I use are left-handed, in the somewhat optimistic hope that they'll pull out what's left of the stud. But that doesn't work, and I have to resort to an M8 tap. Although I can run the tap down through, there's precious little thread left to hold the stud. So a helicoil it'll be. First I drill out with the supply drill, which I measure as 8.25mm diameter. Then I run the tap through. Screw in the helicoil. And break off the tang. That's much better. For reassembly, I first fit a new head gasket and then the head. This time, however, I do fit the errant O-rings on the longer studs. As well as these 4 O-rings that fit over the studs on top of the head, there should also be a single O-ring on each of the shorter studs, but between the bottom of the barrel and the top of the crankcase. I did trawl back through my photos of the engine rebuild in 2017 and was reassured to find that I had fitted these correctly. Incidentally, I also have the photos of the errant 4 being fitted in the wrong locations. After refitting the washers and nuts, I torque the head down to 40 Newton meters, refit the push rods, reconnect the oil feed pipe, and refit the cap for the inside head nut. Refitting the rockers is a bit more fiddly. Not made any easier as I've given all of the relevant parts a good coating with oil. Every time I refit these rockers, I question myself as to the order of the parts, but I go with the same order in which I first took them off all of those years ago, and a check against the parts diagram, although not very clear, does show the thinner washer between the spring and the carrier plate shoulder. A check on the valve clearances showed that I need to adjust the exhaust, but that the inlet is fine. As with many other settings on the bike, there does appear to be differing views on what they should be set to. I go for 0.22mm on both. Despite being careful with the previous rocker cover gasket, I fit a new one before refitting the cover. As with all my stainless fasteners, I am applying a good coating of value slip. Next, it's the inlet stub, a new inlet rubber, and then the carb. The difference in the feel of the new inlet rubber compared to the old is quite remarkable, definitely the right thing to do. To finish off on this side, I fit 2 new exhaust studs. And as a little aside, I do eventually remember to remove that rag blocking the inlet. As we can see, it's not just the exhaust collets that have gone rusty, as the flanges are also suffering. I painted the flanges with heat-proof paint, which was as reliable as I expected, and it soon started to come off. I can probably get these ceramic coated, but that will take time. Also, although generally available, replacement collets are on back order, so are not immediately available. I might have a go at something else with both, but I'll come back to that later. In the meantime, I need to sort out the errant O-rings on the other cylinder. Thanks for watching.